If you're like most of us and you're honest and you're in a relationship or you've been in relationships, then you don't know how to solve a problem. You don't know how to fight fair. You don't know how to work through a conflict without shutting down or maybe exploding or arguing. And if we're really honest with ourselves, it's probably one of the sources of conflict and problems when it comes to connecting with people and when it comes to building healthy relationships. But it's not your fault if that's something that you face. Because at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a technique. So stay on this video. I'm going to give you a powerful technique that will help you over time to rewrite that story inside your subconscious mind. So, what am I talking about today? I'm talking about conflict and how we all have patterns, dysfunctional patterns of moving through conflict. And unfortunately, these patterns were formed early on before we got a chance to reject them or to question them because we didn't have a conscious filter per se. We didn't have that part of us, that part of our brain that wasn't developed yet. And so we were like a sponge, just absorbing what was in our environment, and we took in our, what we saw from our dominant caregivers. There's even some research, promising research, that says that guess what? We can also possibly inherit some trauma. So it's not just nurture versus nature. You know, we could also pass traumatic things down the line. And I'll tell you real quick how I know that's true is because I was a really good soccer player when I was young. I used to play soccer and I had a lot of skills, and nobody taught me how to play soccer. I didn't join a soccer camp. Um, the my uncles or my father never sat down and they never taught me how to play soccer. I just, as soon as I got a soccer ball, I was really, really good. And then by the time I got in the team and I honed my skills, I was light years ahead of everyone. But guess what? My father played soccer and he was really good. And so you think that's a coincidence? I don't think so. I think that we're passing down a lot of things that they're not changing the DNA, but they're it's definitely um, on there in our genetics, and the environment then helps us express, what's in the genetics. So that's my little take on that. So back to conflict now. So just think of a relationship that you've had and think about your dominant style. What's your way of solving a conflict? Or when conflict happens, what do you do? And I want you to be honest. Do you shut down? Do you run away? Do you hold it in and then explode? Or are you very confrontational? You don't give somebody a chance to talk. You go from 0 to 100. You're yelling or you're arguing. What is your style? Because if you're honest with yourself, like a lot of us, you don't know how to be in a conflict. You don't know how to work through a conflict. You don't know how to communicate appropriately in a conflict, because there's nothing wrong with conflict. There's nothing wrong with a disagreement. There's nothing wrong with seeing things from different perspectives, or even, you know, brushing up against each other and maybe having some heated debates. But if it's not pushing on any of our wounds, we should be able to easily move through that and even laugh about it. But why is it that in most relationships, and part of the work I've done for years is working with families, working with couples, working with youth, and even what I do now through my hypnosis sessions with people, this stuff comes up, and my meditation practices as well. I see it all the time that people get together and then something happens and the other side of them comes out and it's clashing with their partner, and one partner all of a sudden releases a ton of anger and rage. They don't know where it came from. One guy I was talking to at one point, a client, he was shocked at his own anger and it scared his partner. Right, he threw something, and it's not in his character. And he was recently married, I think about just a year and a half in. So what's going on there? You know, what's going on is that that childhood that that individual had, right? That inner child is still there with him. That part of him that, for whatever reason, which we'll get into, gets triggered when he's in aggressive or uh, situations that create conflict. There's a part of him that that situation feels familiar. And if you're listening, you probably can relate to it, that there's situations that feel familiar to possibly things that you experienced as a child. And so the unconscious mind, or that part of us that's still kind of stuck there, will just respond in that way. Will just respond in that way to kind of protect itself. Other things, there are many other things that can happen. One thing that can happen is somebody could feel angry and it doesn't match the situation because it's really coming from a part of them that doesn't feel heard, doesn't feel respected, because they weren't respected or they weren't heard as a child. So when that conflict happens, that part of them rises up, that, maybe that inner teenager rises up and overreacts and overresponds because it feels threatened, doesn't feel safe. It wasn't heard. It wasn't given a chance to set its boundaries. Its boundaries were violated or crossed. And so all these things are going on behind the scenes, behind the curtain. And all we see, or all people see, is what they're arguing about or what they're frustrated about. And they're kind of focused on that. They think that's the problem. No, the problem is the pattern of conflict that you inherited, that we all inherited. So going through, got my list here. I mentioned shutting down. This is a pattern, right? Running away is another pattern. I don't want to talk about this. Let's talk about this later. And this can be just going quiet, going silent, while inside there's a storm brewing. Another pattern people have is being the peacemaker, right? They push away conflict. It's okay. I don't want to deal with this. Let's just forget about it. Let's just push it under the rug. But they're holding resentment in. So all these styles are learned. They're not just something that, people go into. No, if you look at what happens in your life, you'll see that there's a pattern to how you are when it comes to conflict or potential conflict or disagreements. And so looking at that is really important because it's going to show you what is behind the scenes, what's operating and what's controlling your behavior, because you literally go unconscious at that moment and that behavior pattern or that other you just takes over. And if you want, personal power in your life, if you want to evolve past these things, you've got to start looking at that in order to heal it, in order to rewrite that. And when you do that, you can invite awareness, which is probably one of the most important things, compassion for yourself, understanding, which can then help you create healthier relationships because you'll start to see what you're doing to contribute to unhealthy patterns and what you're allowing from others or what you're doing to others. So it's a win-win to look at these things. So I mentioned some of the patterns, and one of the things you need to know is that it happens when you're under stress. Because just think, you're calm, you're cool, and then somebody says something, or you're whether you're at work or with your partner or whatever, and you immediately go into that pattern. What's going on there? Well, when we're under stress, we default back to our core way of functioning, right? It literally hijacks our conscious mind, our ability to maintain self-control, because that situation seen as some type of threat, it activates this pattern in us, and we tend to react instead of responding. And that's not what we want to do. We want to be able to grow up inside and be emotionally mature so we can create more harmony, more peace, and more loving and empowering relationships. We don't want to be under the control of the past, something that happened, decades ago, but we still haven't processed it. And instead, we're blaming other people, or some people just, they give up on relationships or say, oh, all men are this, or all, women are all this, or whatever it is. No, it's because you got to deal with those patterns. Another thing to consider is your birth order. Now, I'm not going to get really deep into it, but I want you to look at your whether you're firstborn, secondborn, middleborn, or your only child, or whatever. It's not necessarily the place that you were born, it's the psychological place you were born. So, because some firstborns don't act like firstborns, uh, they get dethroned, and other younger siblings can take on that role. But generally, firstborns tend to be authoritative, bossy, controlling, but they have great leadership skills. They take action. At the same time, a lot of stuff was put on them unfairly. They had to maybe grow up fast. They took the hit for all the that the siblings didn't have to. I mean, they took a lot of stuff when, a lot of issues, not just physical hitting, but by hit, I mean they took a lot of trauma that their other siblings didn't get because their parents fortunately were, it was like trial and error. And by the time the second or third child came along, maybe they were busy working, or they let up a little, they didn't have as much fear going on, or they're just distracted. So birth order is important because if you can see the psychological stance or picture that you've been programmed, it's kind of like a script that was given to you. What that's going to do is show you how you can break out of that, because you didn't sign up for it. It's just something that you were given. You just played this role. The problem is, as you get older, people still play those roles. So they go into situations as the firstborn, always in charge, always bossy, over bossy, taking control, trying to tell people what to do, or feeling the burdens all on them and no one's pulling their weight. Um, you get what I'm saying? And so, you know, these roles, these masks can be heavy, can be limiting, can be stifling, and they stem from childhood. So knowing that can help you, because if you're a firstborn and your partner's a baby, in the family, the last born, and you get together and you're that take charge, get things done, and they're used to people kind of doing things for them or getting away with stuff, you could see how that can create conflict because both of you are going into your roles, going into your habitual patterns, right? So look at that, research that, and you'll see how that can play a role in your personality and also in the way you do conflict, in the way you do relationships, in the way you do a lot of things. So the next thing is, in order to break this pattern, and I'm getting to the a powerful technique you can use is coming up real soon. But one of the things you need to really key on is that this idea of being normal is probably one of what I would say when I talk to a lot of clients is one of the most common barriers or obstacles I see towards change. This idea that this is just how I am. You know, this is me. I can't change. Take it or love it. This is me. Don't change me. This is how I am. I am this way. I am that way. And that's a lie. That's not how you were. That's how you were made to be. And now you get a choice to choose who you want to be and how you want to be. You get to create yourself again. First, you got to acknowledge these things. You got to get over this idea that it's normal. You know, that's just how I am. I know one person that um, one client, they're like, that's just how I am. I'm loud. I yell, really, you intimidate people. You like to intimidate people. And, because you were made to feel intimidated, somebody intimidated you, that, and you absorbed that. And so getting over this idea of normal is so important, because it's another mask that you wear. It's going to limit you, and it's going to cause problems. The real transformation happens when you can step into an identity that's bigger than all that. And that really is the identity of being the creator of your life. And you realize that I am not my thoughts, I am not my feel, I'm not even these patterns. You give yourself space to transform these patterns. It's not going to happen overnight. It takes time. It does take some work. At the same time, it is liberating, because you're now tapping into more of your potential, more peace, more harmony, simply by starting to do practices that help you to disconnect from this idea of this is how I am. Especially for people on all sides. There's people who avoid conflict. I used to date this girl, and everything was just perfect about her, uh, on the books, but actually wasn't perfect. She was, really avoided any type of disagreements, and was just like, I don't want to talk about that. Let's just not go there. And it really bothered me to the point where, I broke up with her, because I needed somebody who was not going to argue with me, but had a perspective and opinion that was different from mine. I really appreciated that. And now looking back, I realized I felt bad, but now I'm like, no, that was the right thing. Something in me knew that, you know, she wasn't being authentic. She was playing this role. She was probably afraid to create conflict, afraid to lose the relationship. But she did lose the relationship based off that fear. Um, I've been on the other side too of dating, other women who were very argumentative and just created drama. And I realized that I even have some family members like that. Stuff can't just go straight or normal or cool. There has to be drama. Like, that is people's normal sometimes. Let's create drama. If everything is going smooth, that's boring. I'm not saying they're doing this consciously, but because they were they grew up in such conflict, in such disharmony, their unconscious mind, dare I say, their spirit is filled with this conflict, that if they're not creating it, they're looking for it. You know, I even see it with people I know till this day. They are drawn to all those videos that's just on social media, like their timeline is conflict. It's like, real fights, you know, uh, around the world. Oh, people getting rushed, people getting beat up, drama. Oh my gosh, watch this guy get caught by his girl, all this stuff. So they're just continually drawn to drama. And then their life is one drama to a next, to a next, to a next. And they're so caught up in the drama that they don't realize that they're creating this because they were programmed, they grew up in and absorbed this atmosphere of conflict, of this is what's normal. So their unconscious mind is going to give them what is normal: conflict, disharmony, drama, no peace, problems. So it's important to heal this, and you could see on how this can affect people's lives on many levels. And I'm getting to the activity, almost there. Pretty much covered, yeah, pretty much covered most of what I wanted to cover. So when you're on this journey, make sure you look at your identity, what's normal to you. Be honest. Yeah, I like the drama. You know, if that's you, be honest. I like to watch these videos all the time. I like to get into the gossip all the time. I like to be involved in drama all the time. Be honest with yourself and then decide, are you ready to leave that behind? The opposite is true. If you see your style and you are one of those people who shut down, or they don't like to argue, but then they explode. Realize, okay, that's my style. This is something that I do. Probably one or two of your caregivers, this is what I wanted to say. One or two of your caregivers or parents had that style. One of your parents maybe was very aggressive or loud or explosive, and then maybe another one shut down and was quiet, but then roared after, right? Or maybe there was someone in the middle. Just look at what you absorbed. Look at what you took in, and just see that as a mask that you were wearing. It's not you. It's not who you are. It's who you think you are, but it shows up primarily when you're under stress, and it's become kind of your normal, your theme, but you can break out of it. And the key is having some type of practices that you do, mindfulness, meditation, or if you have a coach or whatever it is you do, to break out of these things, to be able to separate your thoughts and feelings from you, to be able to, you know your triggers and calm and soothe yourself when you're in these situations, because it's important to bring awareness in there. Like, I mean, awareness, like, oh man, right now I'm going back into this pattern of shutting down. Oh, this is me again, yelling for no reason, right? And this is where the healing begins. This is where the healing yourself in that moment, taking a break and stepping away. Hard to do, but you can do it, and know that, you know what? Yeah, I'm pissed off, or whatever's happening in this argument is one thing. That's the content, that's the story. But the real thing is what's going on in my nervous system. All right. So here's the exercise. I promised you the exercise. Here it is. Once you've identified what that pattern is, or those patterns you want to change, and you're working on, you know, disconnecting in the moment when you see yourself going into those patterns, and bringing in awareness, deep breaths, and then choosing how you want to respond. That's the key. This technique I'm going to give you is going to work on your unconscious as well. So what you're going to do is you're going to relax yourself, slow your breathing down in whatever way that you do to get yourself into a nice calm state. We call it the alpha state. I teach a lot of different ways to do that. If you'd like help with that, as you get into that state, you'll know, because certain things start happening in your body and in your awareness. What that means is you're opening up the gates to your unconscious mind. It's easier to access that. At that point, you imagine little Sally or little Johnny, you yourself at whatever age. Don't overthink this, right? Just use your imagination and get into the feelings as they come up. And I want you to imagine little Johnny or little Sally growing up, like, at that age, but in a home that handled conflict wonderfully, handled conflict peacefully, lovingly, respectfully. What would that be like? What would that feel like for you? So that could be, for example, being spoken to with respect, you giving you a chance to feel heard safely, laughter and playfulness, even in the midst of tense debates or disagreements, a general feeling of safetyness and freedom. Give yourself that grace. Give yourself those feelings and those images, and just imagine growing up there in that family, that ideal family where conflict was handled a certain way, a peaceful way, a mature way, and you feel good about it. Really spend time and absorb. This is a very powerful exercise. I do it with a lot of clients, done it with myself, and added more things in there, but start there. Don't just do this once. You got to do this. Repetition is the key. You got to do this every day. For how long? I don't know. You go with your intuition. I don't know your situation or what you're dealing with, so I can't tell you. It's different for everybody. They do have general things about 21 days and stuff, uh, but that might not relate to you. You may need more. You may need 3 months. You may need 2 months of it. Do it. Just do it. Do it and see how you feel. Keep going to that happy you, empowered you, and it could feel weird at first because all you know is what's normal. You gotta push through. You gotta keep doing that so that your unconscious starts to get, oh, this is what's normal. And you might be thinking, well, how is this going to work? It works because your unconscious doesn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. It doesn't know. Think about it. You dream. Sometimes you have dreams and the dreams feel so real. Yeah, you might have been sweating, your heart might have been beating, or whatever, and you wake up, you're like, damn, that was a dream. Or you're watching a movie, as you're watching the movie, you're getting angry, or you're laughing, or you're getting excited. That's your unconscious mind reacting to that movie. I mean, it's not real. They're actors. That's not a real spaceship. That's not a real thing that's happening. But it doesn't know the difference. So do this exercise, relax yourself, and do it every day. And give me the results. you know, uh, Send your comments. Let me know how you did. All right. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, and take care.